Who is? Who is? Give him some hand claps, church. He woke you up this morning, got you on your way, made sure you got here, gave you the warmth, strength in your limbs and your hands, and shout about it because God is. Woo, that got me going this morning. Greetings to everyone this morning. We know who God is. He's our all in all. And this is the 12th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and we have a familiar theme, storms. And last night, isn't God good? He showed us his power last night. And the storm was raging. And I just got to go back to my childhood again. That was so long ago, but I still remember that when it was lightning and thundering, we used to turn all the lights off, sit in the dark, on the floor, and be quiet. It's some value in that, church. We sat there no matter how long that storm raged. We stayed in that room together. And it told us to be still, be quiet, and listen to God at work. However, my theme is a little different. It's today is you will never walk alone. The theme is you will never walk alone. However, I would be remiss because this is Father's Day weekend, and I did have a little joke I wanted to tell you. Since we got so many men in church today, that they changed the date to Father's Day till next week. So you got to come back again next week, right? It didn't seem to be too funny. But I want to say Happy Father's Day to all those fathers, surrogate fathers, father figures, grandfathers, uncles, all the priests who gave their life to lead the sheep. And all the men with the potential to be a father. And you know, I go back to when my father and I used to have those conversations. He taught me and reminded me of a lot of things. And it's amazing that the things that I was exposed to at an early age, I still remember today, but in a different context. My father loved to read. He loved music, especially jazz. He loved pinochle. And I had to play with him when he had nobody else to play with him. But he taught me a lot of pinochle tricks. But one of the things he did is he loved Roy Hamilton. He had that album, and he used to play it on one of those little record players where you can only play one at a time, and you can only turn it up but so loud that you could hear the words. And Roy Hamilton sang a song on that album by Rodgers and Hammerstein from the musical Carousel. And the name of that song was You Never Walk Alone. And he played that album, and you know, the other songs on there I like to hum to, like, I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter. I know somebody out there know about that, don't you? But the one I focused on was You Never Walk Alone. Because in that song, when they said at the end of the storm, there was a bright golden light, and the birds were singing. So I was always hopeful, just like last night when I remembered those days we sat in the dark. It was something hopeful about after that storm was over, that the earth would be cleansed, and that things will be different, and that the storm was just a break for us to sit still and think about God. In the past, I used the same theme, You Never Walk Alone. However, this time, I feel I have a deeper insight about how this song fits into what I'm reading today. And today I want to focus on the gospel with some support from other readings. In the gospel, Jesus is calming the power of chaos. For the people of Mark's time, the storm brought to mind some of the mythical images and stories. The belief was that the chaos dragon lived in the sea, and a common belief in the ancient world was that storms in the sea were caused by the rising of the chaos dragon. The storms were a tidal wave which caused by the great dragon, a symbol of cosmic power of evil. The chaos dragon is in the background of stories in the Old Testament, such as the first reading from the book of Job and in the Psalm today, which speaks about the storm, the dragon which was a sign of power against God. The gospel readings gives us a snapshot of Jesus' day, and if you read the entire chapter of 4 of Mark, you see that Jesus had a very busy day teaching, preaching, and meeting with his disciples. He wanted to get away. He boarded the boat and went to lay down on a cushion and went to sleep. He was exhausted. He trusted in his Father, therefore he was not concerned or worried about the boat trip and how it would end, because God's will be done. I remember, and you may too, that I had one of those days many times, and the only thing I could do was go home and go to sleep. And I had a job, and they gave me a little fireman hat because every day I was putting out fires. I don't know if anybody knows about that kind of thing. And that day I went home so exhausted, I didn't want no food, no TV, no radio, no conversation. All I wanted to do was just go to bed. And I slept as Jesus did that day, because Jesus was about his Father's work and working for God to evangelize, heal the sick, teach the crowds, and the disciples can be quite taxing, church. The next morning I woke up and my wife asked me, "Did you hear the thunder and lightning last night?" My reply, "What thunder? What lightning?" If it had stormed while I was asleep, and normally I'm a light sleeper, but if anyone out there can relate to what I am talking about, raise your hand. Okay, so I wasn't by myself then. So Jesus told his disciples to board the boat and go to the other side, away from the crowd. Some boats followed him. They sailed along on the evening breeze, and Jesus slept. However, the storm changed all of that. And the possibilities of a big storm at that time were very real on the Sea of Galilee. A large wave could sink their boat with water coming over the side, and they may have lost control of the rudder or control of the boat. Many of those disciples were fishermen and may have experienced some storms while they were on the water, but none like this one. It was a big storm, maybe bigger than any they might have experienced. They were frightened and afraid that they were going to die. Storms have a way of frightening and confusing the disciples and us today. It can cause us to forget that we are capable and who our protector is, who told us, "I will never leave you." Jesus kept on sleeping despite the roar of the waves and the pounding of the rain and the flashing of the lightning and the rumbling of the thunder. So what did the disciples do? They went to Jesus and woke him up, and they must have felt he didn't care. They asked him, "Teacher, don't you care if we're about to die?" It didn't matter that Jesus was tired, but what mattered to them was that Jesus appeared to be indifferent to their struggles. Have you ever had times in your life when you felt that Jesus was indifferent to you being overwhelmed with your storms? And what did you do? Jesus got up. They said in the Bible that he woke up, and he shouted above the roar of the wind, and as he commanded, "Be quiet!" And the wind stopped roaring, and the noise stopped. But the waves kept beating the ship. Jesus shouted to the waves, "Be still." The waves stopped. Who could imagine waves stopping? There was a peace no one had ever experienced. The disciples were amazed and probably speechless. There's a message for us today, my church friends, that those of us who are in a storm and those of us who may be getting ready to go into a storm. And as I was working on this homily, a storm appeared in my life. And like the disciples on a boat, I used my skills that worked in the past. Remember that, worked in the past. However, the more I used them, the more intense the storm became. It confused me and it controlled me. I wasn't sleeping right or even eating right, the right things. I tried to win, to be right. I finally surrendered. I gave up the need to be right and admitted to my state of powerlessness. But in my powerlessness, I was not helpless. I was able to call and tell God, "Help me." It wasn't so bad, my powerlessness, but if we think we're powerless, we're not helpless, church. We can still call on his name. And let me be clear, I have forgotten his presence in me. I was too busy trying to take care of business. I had to rouse him and then remember him. The disciples and me have to let him do his work. That is to let Jesus keep watch within me. I needed to be quiet and still. Once this happened, things, believe it or not, became a little more saner. And I was at peace, and again I was amazed. Those are the times we have to be quiet and stand still, because I have said this statement and heard this statement so many times. I did all I can do, and then I prayed. I'm here to tell you today that that's backwards. The disciples suspected that they did all they could do as fishermen and found that it wasn't enough. And just like me, instead of being in a storm, I became part of the storm. For there was chaos and madness in me and evil thoughts. What is that old saying to us? If you cannot beat them, join them. I believe the more I tried to change someone else's mind, I became more like them. I don't know how many times I have tried to do something on my own, but it just didn't work. My friends, Jesus wasn't asleep. He was there all the time. And out of my frustration, I called him and found out that I woke him up. Did I really wake him up? We walk by faith, church, not by sight. I know that some of you are witnesses out there today. Be still and know that I am God. And I can bring an end to your confusion. You're being overwhelmed, your anger and your chaos. Come sit in the eye of the storm and feel the gentle and quiet peace of God. Jesus turned to his disciples and us. Why are you afraid? How many times in the Old and New Testament did we hear the angels and Jesus tell us, do not be afraid? The question is very important to us today because the birth of many of our fears is our lack of faith. As Jesus said to the disciples, do you still have no faith? And he poses that question to us today. The disciples saw the power of Jesus over the past couple of days, and we and our ancestors have experienced the love and faithfulness of Jesus for over 2,000 years, and we still have doubts. Then the disciples' statement ended the reading, who is this man who even the wind and the waves obey him? This demonstration of power over the power of chaos that Jesus demonstrated is the substance of faith and the confidence in his ability. But it raises a question for the disciples and us about his identity. Only God has this kind of power. And it's also important to notice that what Jesus said to the sea is be still. Be still here means, on one hand, calm, but it also means peace. There's a connection between the power of evil manifested in the storm and the power of evil that's manifested in ourselves and conflicts and wars and riots and violence. There's a connection between the storms in our lives and the storms of history which Jesus calmed. The gift of Jesus is the gift of peace and true stillness in the midst of great storms. The metaphor for church is ship. The universal church and all the churches worldwide are with Jesus as the captain of the ship. And many of our churches are in storms. We have brothers and sisters in Charleston, South Carolina, in storm. And we need to pray for the leaders of the church. And the churches may need to be awakened to Jesus in them. And that we are all God's children, and that the peace and quiet of Christ shall prevail. The ship of our city of Baltimore is in a storm. And I just want to say this. The mayor, the police chief, the state's attorney, the governor, or the National Guard cannot heal this city, church. Only Jesus can do that. God made this land, and God can heal the land. Let's get together, first waking into Jesus within us, and then praying fervently for our elected officials, the citizens in Baltimore, for their awakening to Jesus, to the Jesus in them. And then, and only then, can we bask in the quiet and peace of Jesus as kingdom people, promoting peace and serving each other in Jesus' name. Continue to pray for those who protect and serve us, our police, our emergency workers, our EMTs, and also anyone else that helps us out, the firemen, because they need our prayers and we need their service. And my friends, the story continues because there are many who still don't know who that man is. Do you know who that man is? If we look at the world today with all its demands on us to be loyal to many things and people, Jesus seems to take a back seat in many of our lives. But I'm here today to tell you, church, that Jesus is not my co-pilot. Jesus is my pilot. When we find our individual boats, our city boat, being tattered and torn in the seas of life, we, all of us, need to keep this gospel close at hand, because we can refer back to it when the waters of fear and the winds of doubt and waning faith, that we must remember. Remember to consult Jesus first for directions. Remember God for his goodness and affirming that he loves you and will not give you anything you cannot bear. Trust him. Remember, Jesus is always available. Just call him and he will be with you. As Psalm 91, 14-16 says to us, I will save those who love me and protect those who acknowledge me as Lord. When they call on me, I will answer them. When they're in trouble, I will be with them. I will rescue them and honor them, and I will reward them with a long life. And most of all, I will save them. Remember, you will never walk alone if you believe and live your faith. Remember, it's our faith or lack of faith how we fare the storm. Remember to trust above all, as Job in the first reading. We must trust and keep the faith. Those who believe and wait on the Lord will have their reward. Remember to let our faith be stronger than our fears. Remember, when we feel lost in our storm, remember we have an anchor in the Lord. Hold fast to the anchor so that you won't get caught up in the waves and the wind. Remember, Jesus is our lighthouse that is always on, showing us the way to him. Follow the light, church. Pay heed to him as temptation arises. If the wind whispering at first and it becomes later until you pay attention. If it disturbs you, it is the ocean beating against you. And there are moments, these are the moments to awaken Jesus and remind you of these words. Who is the man? Even the sea and the wind obey. As the words to the song, You Never Walk Alone, go on, it says, walk on through the wind. Walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and turned, you will never, ever, ever walk alone.